The Navy ship was considered one of the safest vessels ever built. Advanced navigation systems, reinforced hull, multiple backup engines, years of testing before deployment. According to official records, nothing in the ocean should have been capable of bringing it down. Yet one night, it vanished. The mission was classified, but sources later confirmed it was not a combat operation. No enemy engagement. No storm warnings. The sea conditions were described as stable and predictable. At 21:40 hours, the ship sent a routine status update to Naval Command. All systems operational. Crew morale normal. Course unchanged. That was the last confirmed transmission. 30 minutes later, the ship failed to respond to a scheduled check-in. At first, Command assumed a technical glitch. Radio interference was common in that region. Satellites were repositioned. Backup channels activated. Still nothing. By midnight, the situation escalated from communication loss to possible emergency. Nearby vessels were instructed to remain on standby, but not to approach the area yet. Then something disturbing appeared on deep-sea monitoring systems. A low-frequency signal surged through underwater sensors, slow, powerful, and unfamiliar. It did not resemble an explosion. It did not match seismic activity. Analysts could not classify it. Moments later, the ship disappeared from radar entirely. No distress call. No emergency beacon. No signs of fire or impact. By morning, the ocean was calm. Empty. As if the ship had never existed. Official reports would later claim mechanical failure under extreme conditions. But those reports ignored one critical fact. This type of ship does not sink silently. Something happened in those final moments, something the Navy chose never to explain. And the truth lies far deeper than the surface of the sea. In the hours after the ship vanished, Naval Command worked under strict silence. No press release. No public alert. Only internal channels remained active. Satellites were tasked to recheck the last known coordinates. Thermal scans showed nothing, no heat bloom, no burning fuel, no wreckage floating on the surface. For a vessel of that size, debris should have been visible for miles. There was none. Underwater sensors told a stranger story. At exactly the moment contact was lost, multiple listening stations detected a deep, pulsing vibration. It traveled through water at a frequency too low for human hearing, yet strong enough to be recorded thousands of kilometers away. This was not the sound of metal tearing apart. Not an implosion. Not an explosion. It was rhythmic. Engineers described it as deliberate, a word rarely used in accident analysis. Even more troubling was what followed. The signal did not fade quickly, as most underwater events do. It continued for 40 seconds, then stopped abruptly, as if switched off. When analysts overlaid the signal with the ship's system logs, they noticed something chilling. The vibration began before the final transmission ended. Whatever caused it was already there. A search operation was authorized under a classified protocol. Aircraft scanned the surface. Submarines listened from a distance. Autonomous drones were prepared but not yet deployed. And then came the anomaly no one could explain. For a brief moment, the ship's identification code reappeared on radar, not at the surface, but far below it. At a depth the ship was never designed to reach. Seconds later, it vanished again. No Navy vessel can descend like that intact. which meant the ship was not sinking in the way ships normally do. It was being taken somewhere the ocean itself was never meant to reveal. And the Navy, despite all its power, had no idea how or why. 2 days after the disappearance, when the search had already been quietly reduced, something unexpected happened. A signal came through. It did not arrive on standard naval channels. It was picked up by a civilian deep-sea research station, one that monitored underwater noise for environmental studies. The technicians nearly ignored it, assuming it was background interference, until they recognized the pattern. The signal matched an old naval emergency format, a legacy protocol no longer in active use, but still stored in archival databases. More disturbing was the source location. It originated from below the last known position of the ship. The message was badly distorted. Water pressure, distance, and unknown interference had torn it apart. But fragments were recoverable. Not coordinates. Not system data. Voices. At least 3. They spoke slowly, as if struggling against resistance. Words overlapped, stretched, and repeated. Analysts isolated a single sentence that appeared more than once. Time is not moving correctly. That phrase changed everything. If the ship had simply sunk, no transmission would be possible from that depth. If it had imploded, nothing would remain to speak at all. Yet the signal continued for 12 seconds before cutting out completely. Naval Command classified the discovery instantly. The civilian station was ordered to erase its raw recordings. The technicians were forced to sign non-disclosure agreements under threat of prosecution. But one copy survived. An analyst who reviewed it noticed something most others missed. The background noise behind the voices was not random. When slowed down, it formed a repeating structure, the same low-frequency rhythm detected on the night of the disappearance. The ship had not been destroyed. It was still intact long enough to transmit. And whatever surrounded it was affecting not just machinery, but reality itself. From that moment on, the investigation was no longer about an accident. Once the distorted transmission was confirmed, the Navy changed its strategy overnight. The search and rescue operation was officially downgraded. Publicly, resources were reallocated. Privately, a new investigation began, one that would never appear in any report. A classified task group was formed, pulling experts from naval intelligence, deep-sea engineering, and experimental physics. Their mandate was simple but alarming. Determine whether the ship could still exist. The first decision they made was to erase the trail. All satellite data from the region was reclassified. Sonar logs were removed from standard archives. Officers who had reviewed the transmission were reassigned within days, scattered across different commands to prevent information overlap. Families of the crew were told nothing beyond the official explanation, catastrophic mechanical failure. Behind closed doors, however, the evidence refused to fit that narrative. Engine logs recovered from backup relays showed no cascade failure. Power systems were stable until the final second. Hull sensors did not register the kind of stress associated with sinking or implosion. Instead, they showed external pressure increasing evenly across the ship. That should not happen. Pressure from depth increases vertically, not uniformly. This pattern suggested the vessel had entered an environment where the rules of the ocean no longer applied. Even more unsettling was a small data fragment recovered from an encrypted navigation buffer. It showed the ship's position updating without corresponding movement, as if space around it was shifting rather than the ship itself. One senior analyst summarized the finding in a memo that was immediately classified. The vessel did not fail. The environment changed. After that memo circulated, the investigation's tone shifted from curiosity to fear. Funding was restricted. Questions were discouraged. Certain hypotheses were labeled non-actionable, a bureaucratic term that. Despite official hesitation, the task group authorized a limited deep-sea survey. Not a rescue. Not a recovery. An observation. Unmanned underwater drones were deployed at a safe distance from the ship's last known location. These machines were designed to withstand extreme pressure, capable of descending far deeper than any manned vessel. At first, the feeds were normal. Dark water. Suspended particles. Silence. Then the instruments began to behave strangely. Depth readings conflicted with each other. One sensor reported the drone descending rapidly, while another insisted it was holding position. External cameras showed complete darkness, yet light sensors detected faint illumination, as if something nearby was emitting light without a visible source. At a depth far beyond the ship's operational limits, the drones detected a massive anomaly. Not wreckage. A void. Sonar pulses sent into the area did not return normally. Some echoed back too quickly. Others returned delayed, distorted, or not at all. It was as if sound itself was being absorbed or redirected. One drone crossed an invisible boundary. Its video feed froze, but the telemetry continued. Internal clocks showed missing time. When control commands were sent, the drone responded after a delay of exactly 16 seconds. Every time. When the drone finally returned, it showed no damage. No cracks. No pressure deformation. But its outer hull had changed shape. The metal had curved inward smoothly, without fractures or heat marks, like it had been softened and reshaped rather than crushed. Engineers were unable to reproduce this effect in any laboratory. The ocean had done something no known force could explain. A quiet realization spread through the task group. They were not searching for a wreck. They were observing a boundary, a place where the sea no longer behaved like the sea. And whatever existed beyond it had already interacted with the missing ship. Intentionally, after the drones returned, analysts focused on one detail that refused to make sense. Time inconsistencies. Every device that approached the anomaly showed clock drift. Not random errors, patterned distortion. Some systems ran slower. Others jumped ahead by seconds or minutes. A few appeared to repeat the same moment multiple times. At first, engineers blamed software faults. Then they compared independent systems. Mechanical clocks. Digital timers. Atomic references. All disagreed, but all disagreed in the same direction. Time near the boundary was unstable. This discovery forced the task group to re-examine the strange transmission recovered earlier. When the audio was reprocessed using adjusted time scaling, hidden layers emerged. Background noise aligned into rhythmic pulses, closely matching human brainwave frequencies. That was no coincidence. Medical advisors were consulted. They warned that prolonged exposure to such an environment could alter perception, memory, and identity itself. A human mind depends on time flowing forward in a predictable way. Remove that and cognition begins to fracture. This explained a disturbing pattern found in crew records. Several sailors had previously reported brief episodes of lost time during earlier missions in the same region. At the time, these reports were dismissed as fatigue or stress. Now they looked like early exposure. A classified simulation was run using all collected data. The result was deeply unsettling. If the ship had crossed fully into the anomaly, it might still exist in a slowed or displaced time state, intact, powered, and occupied while years passed outside. Alive but unreachable. The simulation was shut down immediately. Because accepting it meant accepting something far worse than loss. It meant the ship had not sunk. It had been trapped somewhere between moments. Once the idea took hold that the ship might still exist outside normal time, attention turned to the crew. Officially, they were declared lost at sea. Privately, analysts feared something far more disturbing. Crew profiles were reviewed in detail, psychological evaluations, mission logs, even personal messages sent before departure. Nothing suggested panic or instability. These were experienced sailors, trained to handle isolation, pressure, and crisis. Yet one pattern stood out. Several crew members had recorded unusual experiences during previous deployments in the same region. Moments of disorientation. Short gaps in memory. A persistent feeling of being watched while deep underwater. At the time, these reports were ignored. Now they felt like warnings. Medical experts advised that human consciousness, when exposed to unstable time flow, would attempt to adapt. Memory would lose order. Cause and effect would blur. Identity built on continuity could begin to dissolve. The darkest theory emerged from this analysis. If the ship was still intact inside the anomaly, then the crew might still be alive but no longer perceiving reality as humans do. Not injured. Not dead. Changed. They could experience hours while years passed outside. Or live the same moments repeatedly without realizing it. Communication, if possible at all, would be fragmented and distorted by time itself. Even more unsettling was the question of interaction. The anomaly had reshaped metal without force, absorbed sound, and altered time. That suggested control. Intent. If something intelligent existed within it, then the crew was not alone. They were being observed. Possibly studied. One internal report concluded with a sentence that terrified everyone who read it. The ship was not destroyed because destruction was unnecessary. Shortly after, all discussion about survivors was officially prohibited. Because admitting the crew might still exist meant admitting responsibility. For years, nothing happened. The anomaly remained silent. The ocean returned to normal behavior. Officially, the case was closed, archived under mechanical failure and environmental causes. But deep-sea sensors never stopped listening. Almost 9 years after the ship disappeared, a monitoring station detected a familiar pattern, a low-frequency signal emerging from the same coordinates. Weak at first, almost lost in background noise. Then it repeated. The waveform matched the original signal recorded on the night of the disappearance. Same rhythm. Same duration. 40 seconds. This time, however, there was a difference. The signal carried variation. Subtle changes in amplitude and timing formed a structured sequence. Not random. Not natural. Analysts compared it against known databases and found an unsettling match. The modulation aligned with obsolete novel communication cycles, protocols that had been installed on the missing ship and nowhere else. The implication was impossible to ignore. Something was transmitting using the ship's systems. A classified team was assembled to monitor the signal without responding. Every repetition occurred at precise intervals 6 hours apart. When matched against old duty rosters, the timing aligned with standard crew watch rotations. Someone was keeping schedule. Gravity sensors added another layer of concern. During each transmission, slight distortions were detected in the surrounding water column as if a massive object was shifting position just out of reach. Not rising. Not sinking. Adjusting. A warning memo circulated among senior command. If this represents communication, then the boundary is no longer stable. Naval forces worldwide received quiet advisories to avoid the region. Active sonar was restricted. No transmissions were to be sent toward the signal. Because replying meant recognition. And recognition might invite something back. Despite strict orders, a small intelligence unit began analyzing the signal in isolation. They did not transmit back. They only listened. Using advanced signal processing, they separated the low-frequency wave into layers. What emerged was not encryption, it was compression. Information folded into time gaps, hidden between pulses. When the data was expanded, fragments appeared. Internal ship telemetry. Environmental readings. Short video frames. All confirmed one impossible fact. According to the data, only 11 days had passed since the ship disappeared. Inside the anomaly, time had barely moved. Life support logs showed stable conditions. Power systems were operating at reduced but controlled levels. Corridor images revealed dim lighting and empty passageways, distorted but intact. Then came the audio. A single voice, isolated from the noise. The ship's captain. His tone was calm, professional, the voice of someone still in command. "We are contained, not damaged," he said. "The environment is controlled. Time is inconsistent but stable." There was a pause. "It is learning." That sentence changed everything. The final data segment did not match any ship system. When visualized, it formed repeating geometric structures, the same shapes hinted at in sonar anomalies years earlier. The analysts realized the truth too late. The signal was not a distress call. It was a status report. The ship was functioning as a reference point, a bridge between two environments. Technology and human consciousness were being observed together over time. When Command discovered the unauthorized decoding, the unit was shut down. Systems were wiped. Personnel were reassigned. But the signal changed. Its frequency shifted upward, closer to ranges used for surface communication. Closer to human hearing. The ocean was no longer whispering from the deep. It was preparing to speak. The final transmission arrived without warning. No distortion. No interference. Perfectly clear. For the first time, the signal crossed into frequencies detectable by surface-level systems. Naval radios flickered. Atmospheric sensors registered pressure fluctuations. Even civilian instruments recorded unexplained interference. The boundary was no longer confined to the deep. A voice came through. Older. Steadier. Still unmistakably human. The captain spoke slowly, as if choosing every word with care. "We understand now," he said. "This is not a prison. It is a system. The ocean is only the surface layer of something much larger." He explained that the anomaly was not alive in a biological sense, but it was aware. It observed patterns, adapted to behavior, and learned through interaction. The ship had not been attacked. It had been selected. Human technology, human minds, and structured time made the vessel a perfect reference point. A way to understand the surface world from below. We cannot return, the captain continued. Time alignment would cause collapse on both sides. Bringing us back would not save us, it would break something far worse. Behind his voice, a second resonance could be heard. Not speech. Not sound. Presence. The final message was short. The boundary will open again. Not for invasion, but for connection. Exploration always invites response. Then came the warning. Do not follow us. The transmission ended. Immediately, all anomalies ceased. Signals vanished. Sensors returned to normal. The ocean became silent once more. Officially, the Navy maintains its original statement. Mechanical failure, loss at sea. Unofficially, deep-sea limits were rewritten. Certain regions remain permanently restricted. Active sonar is forbidden in specific coordinates. Not because they are dangerous, but because something below is listening. The ship did not sink. The crew did not die.